Looks so nice.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we have a couple people with us live and more will start to pour in. I'm ready to get started if you are.
Okay,
All
absolutely.
right. Let me just turn the volume up again. Okay. All right. So today, Katerina Simonetti is sitting down to talk with me about financial wellness. She is a financial advisor for UBS. She has quite an impressive resume. So I'm excited to talk with you and to learn just more about all things financial and interesting questions, and we'll just see where it goes.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. It's, just so fun to have this type of discussions, and especially, during this crazy, time that, and everything that's happening in the world, when we have to pay attention to, to everything, to our health and, how we eat, but also, of course, to all of our financial matters. This is more important than ever, with people all of a sudden feeling insecurity about their jobs and their incomes and where they're going to be. And especially this is important for the business owners like yourself, when you are building a business, counting, projecting certain things. And now, things like, COVID-19, changing things around, and we have to adjust our plan and kind of, figure out one day at a time, what we're going to do.
So, okay, so you're a financial advisor. Can you tell me and the people tuning in what exactly that means? Just a little bit more about yourself and what you do at UBS.
Of course. So I am a financial advisor. I work with people on designing and implementing their financial plans. So when you really think of it, we spend so much time planning every single thing in our lives. We plan our vacations, we plan our meals, we plan our trips, and even when we go to the grocery store, we have a list. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times we wing our financial life completely. We just we go to work, we make certain money, we pay our bills. If something is left, maybe it goes into a checking account, and and we really don't give it as much thought as we have to, because it's quite complex and it's scary. I mean, there's an emotional connotation with that. So my job is to help people go through this very complicated process of financial planning and demystify it and make it simple and make it manageable and develop a roadmap for them so they can, just really use it every day in their lives. Mm-hmm. And I started in this job very early on. I've been a financial advisor for 20 years. This is all I've ever done. I was 23 when I became an advisor. And the reason for that was that my father got sick. He had meningitis and he had full memory loss. And while my mother was taking care of him, the responsibility of managing our financial life fell on me. Wow. And it was very complicated and scary and nerve-wracking. And quite frankly, financial advisors that were working with my family were not very helpful. Ooh. So what I kind of promised myself that I would do at that age is that I just wanted to learn investments, financial planning, kind of just roadmap to financial stability for myself. And once I figured it out, I really wanted to help other people through this process. So that's how I became an advisor.
That's so interesting. I didn't know that background piece. It's really cool. And so scary for someone at such a young age to have this responsibility.
Well, and I will give you a little anecdote. And I truly believe that, the step to accomplishing something big, the way that the first step in accomplishing something big is usually very, very small. Sometimes it's making that decision and making, kind of just commitment that I'm going to do something. And when this happened to my family and my dad was sick, one thing that I remember, and I was 20 years old when this happened. I was still in college. One of the scariest things was the pile of statements in his office. And so just kind of think of that visual, right? So I know nothing about finances. I don't know the difference between a checking account, savings account, and investment. I know none of it, right? And the statements were coming in every month, and the pile was growing bigger and bigger.
Oh my gosh.
And I would remember walking into the office and literally walking out of the office. So that first decision that I made was a decision to open these statements. And what I said to myself is, I've got to believe I'm going to college. You know, I've had 2 years of college education. I've got to believe I can figure out something on these statements. I've got to believe that I can identify a date. So the first thing I allowed myself, and I gave myself a break, I said to myself, I'm not going to figure it all out at once, but I got to believe that I can open the statements and sort them in alphabetical order. And that was that first step that got me then to figure out, you know, the balances and start looking at the statements and develop courage eventually to call our financial advisors and start having a conversation with them about, you know, what it was that my father invested in.
Yeah, that's such a good reminder. It's the same thing, I think, in any industry, certainly in nutrition, when I'm dealing with someone who's totally overwhelmed with the thought of having to make lifestyle changes. And like finance, nutrition is very personal. And there's a lot of factors to it, cultural, societal, familial. So there's a lot to it, to your relationship with food. But it's always starting with one step. What can we look at first and foremost before any changes happen? It's just one step at a time. That's a really good reminder of that crossover into finance.
That's right.
As well. And I want to get into financial wellness, but before we do, there was something that you said to me, maybe a couple of years ago at this point, but I think it's really important, and it was a sobering fact, but one that empowered me, and hopefully I'm continuing to make those changes. But it was something along the lines of just how few women take control of their own finances and how many are just content to let their husbands or partners kind of take the lead in that regard. And can you touch on that a little bit, and maybe why it's so important that women...
Yes, and I'm glad that you're bringing it up, because you're right. It's just really sobering statistics, and the data, the information came from the study that the company that I work for, UBS, did a few years ago, and where they interviewed women of across the continents, different ages. And what we found that there was this, first of all, general aversion of women to deal with money issues. And there are, a whole bunch of different reasons, but most women, when asking, when they were asked the question, how comfortable you are dealing with your financial life, said that they were not comfortable. And a majority of them, and I don't remember exact percentages, said that they would prefer to defer financial decisions to their partners.
Yeah.
And more so, these statistics I remember, over 70% of millennial women said that they would prefer their partners to make financial decisions for them.
Wow.
And I will tell you, the other side of the statistics is us interviewing retirees and also divorcees and widows, and every single one of them said that they wish they knew more, they wish they were more involved, and they wish they paid more attention. And so really, to me, this was, kind of a wake-up call personally, because when I became a financial advisor, my goal was never to be a financial advisor to just women, to work with women. But seeing this study certainly made me want to pay more attention and work with women more, because we are so good in so many things. We are great in taking care of multiple things, working, taking care of our families, building and, managing and growing our businesses, paying bills, even day to day. Women are absolutely fantastic in keeping track of our financial lives. What is difficult for us generally is that long-term planning.
Okay.
Because, again, where men kind of just see this as a challenge. Women see the complexity, and it scares us. And I love I love to tell the story that, generally when I think of women and financial life or financial wellness, I'm not sure if you've heard, this kind of an anecdote. It's used in many cases where, you interview a man or a woman for a job, and you list 10 different qualifications for a particular job. And an average woman would look at 10 qualifications and say, out of 10, I cannot do 3. I'm out. I'm not a good candidate for this job.
And not even
an average man would look at the same 10 qualifications and say, out of 10, I can do 3. I'm in. I will learn the rest for the job on the job. And I think that this is where, I think men and women, we can learn so much from each other and mentor and coach each other. And I think as women, we need to take that little, can-do attitude and, that tad bit of maybe healthy arrogance, and just say, you know what, I know enough. I am intelligent and I'm smart and I'm capable. And I just need to take that first step and I'll figure the rest of it out.
Yeah. I will never forget that conversation I had with you, because it was very direct and it was something I needed to hear. And it was like, no, you need to care about this. And this is why you need to care about it. And so, yeah, it's definitely been something that I've switched my perspective on. And it is, you're right. It is scary and a little overwhelming to kind of navigate, especially if you are an entrepreneur or a business owner, because there's so many other things that you need to start looking at that your job as an employee was taking care of for you. Certain things that now you have to set up different accounts and you have to like actively take money out and save for retirement versus like all these things that your job is doing. So it can be a bit overwhelming at times.
That's right.
Yeah. So today our topic was financial wellness. It's not really a term that I'm super familiar with. So I guess, would you mind explaining what that is and telling us a little about that?
Oh, absolutely. So when you think of nutrition, it's never in a vacuum, right? You never think of it as, you have to eat this healthy meals and you develop a plan for your clients, right? You look at you dissect the science of their meals and you help them really plan that healthy life. But if other pieces in their life are falling apart, in other words, if they're not physically fit, if they don't exercise, if they don't sleep well, if their stress is out of line, then this amazing plan that you make for them falls apart.
Right.
So it's the same exact approach with financial wellness. It's not enough to just know the difference between stocks and bonds and cash. You need a plan. You need a well-rounded plan that takes a look at all your entire financial life. And we call this approach at UBS, we call it 3 L's, which is liquidity, longevity, and legacy. And liquidity is day to day. The first step is really taking care of your day-to-day needs, making sure you have enough to pay your bills. And our recommendation is to have anywhere from 6 to 9 months of living expenses. I know to many people it sounds like absurdly high amount of money. But again, remember, you don't have to have it all immediately. That's a goal, right? So if our goal in our emergency bucket to have 6 to 9 months of living expenses, start with $100. Anything, any start, like open a separate account that is completely separate from your checking, and that account gets certain amount every month, and in time you perhaps increase it. The reason it's important is what happens if, God forbid, you lose your job. Well, you have an emergency fund. If you have a house and some major expense comes out, like you need to replace your roof, because there was some a bad hurricane, or an insurance did not come through, right? If, as a business owner, it's even more important, right? Thank God there is the PPP loans and the help that we're getting from the government, but so many businesses find themselves right now in this really difficult situation where liquidity is extremely important. So that is step one, as simple as it sounds. Second one, longevity. It's let's make sure that this money lasts, that, that we don't just live in today. You mentioned a second ago that, that realization, oh my God, I need to save for retirement. And it makes no sense. I'm so young, right? Like, how does a 20-year-old reconcile the need to save for retirement that is going to happen many, many years later? Well, it's a good question, but the thing of it is that time goes by really, really quickly. And when it comes to saving and specifically investing, in your 20s, you can save up $100 a month. And in your 40s, you can save up $1,000 a month. And the 40-year-old will still not catch up to the 20-year-old, because there is this fact of money, of the time value of money. When you start slowly and you buy into, certain market indexes, or you buy stocks, or bonds, anything, 401k plans, you start participating in all these different programs. And it's better to start at a very small level, that not start at all and say, one day, maybe next year I'll have more money.
Okay.
Maybe next year I'm going to be in the better financial situation. So again, starting small, but also being honest with ourselves. In other words, if you feel like, all of a sudden your income went up, you feel a little bit more comfortable, then perhaps this is the time to increase those 401k contributions. And maybe you're maxing out your 401k. Well, then it's good to invest outside of retirement plans, right?
Okay.
So because next thing you know, your 40s, 50s, 60s come around, and Social Security, which is what, most people kind of think, when I retire, I'm going to get Social Security. Social Security only covers, on average, about 30% of our living expenses, which means responsibility for 70% comes on us. So we have to plan for it and just really make sure that we start. The earlier you start, the easier that process is going to be. And then the final bucket is legacy. And legacy, again, when we think of wills, when we think of, powers of attorney, it sounds like that's something old people have to do. But actually everybody needs to have a will, even basic will, and it doesn't necessarily cost thousands of dollars. There are, websites like LegalZoom where you can do it inexpensively. There are, there's simple estate planning that lawyers can do, just not going to be costing a lot, especially if you ask about the fees up front and kind of just, make sure that you know what it will cost. But specifically for families that own, let's say, real estate together, or have children, what will says, it's not just what's going to happen to your money, but also who is going to be the custodian of your child, right? And then the other part of that piece is healthcare power of attorney, and just general power of attorney, because we go through life never thinking that we're going to get sick or somebody will have to take care of us, and to make that decision that for somebody who is going to make your your medical decisions on your behalf, or like my father when he was disabled, the power of attorney gave my mother ability to to take care of his finances. So this is in a nutshell the description of financial wellness. When you truly kind of just look at your finances from every aspect. And that's where ideally, of course, working with a financial advisor becomes like working with a coach, where you have somebody saying, how is your emergency fund? Have you done your will? When was the last time you updated it? Yes, you created it when kids were 5, and right now they're 25. Maybe it's time to to make some changes. And the other part also with legacy is, a lot of times we think of financial wellness just from perspective of how well I am financially, but what we also are looking at is philanthropy and impact, and kind of just making a difference, right? And you can make really smart financial decisions in that respect as well, because 90% of people, when they make gifts, they give cash. While in reality, you can also give appreciated securities, and you can gift in many tax advantageous ways. And also have the impactful philanthropy. A really good friend of mine one time said to me, he goes, when you have nothing to do or can't sleep, like that 3 o'clock in the morning, sometimes, when we all wake up, he goes, sit down and on a piece of paper, write down all these places you gave money to. Maybe it's like a little bit, maybe it's $50, $100, doesn't matter. And he goes, and see how many of those are actually places that you care about, and how many you did this because your friends were having a fundraiser, or you were supporting a neighbor, or just maybe your child was was involved with something in the school. And when I did this, I realized that about 70% of all those gifts went outside of things that I was truly passionate about.
Wow.
So that's a big part of financial wellness as well, and charitable giving doesn't have to be on the large extent. We again usually associate it with, Bill Gateses of the world, right?
Yeah.
But even if you on an average year give, I don't know, $500, you want to make sure that where this money is going to, that it's going to true causes that are close to your heart, that you truly want to fund.
Yeah, that's a really good point that I don't think a lot of people would consider or know about right off the bat. So for this time period where it's a little bit more uncertain than other times, and people are feeling stressed financially, what would you say, or do you have any advice regarding that first L, liquidity? It's for people who are just so unsure of their financial status right now. Is there anything that we can be doing to sort of help that status?
Absolutely. I think that the first step is to take 3 deep breaths and tell yourself that it's going to be okay. That, it doesn't matter how scary and hopeless and, just really desperate this time seem, they are going to pass. And, just kind of remember that first story that I started with. It's finding that small step and little action that we can take to get ourselves out of this situation. And that's what it will take. So, for individuals right now where, businesses are closed and cash flow is down, it's important to kind of just take a look around and say, what can we do? What resources are available to us? And give yourself permission to deviate from a plan that you had. Because a lot of us are so kind of just tunnel vision. We're set. We come up with a plan, and that's plan A, and we're following the steps, and it could be a really, really successful plan. But sometimes something like coronavirus comes around and totally changes it. And we have to give ourselves permission to change this plan and to go from plan A to plan B, and tell ourselves that we're doing this, we're going to plan B. It doesn't make us a failure, right? Because we are our own big critics. And so a lot of times, the scare factor, right? This discussion that is happening inside of our brains when we say, I had this wonderful business, it's closed right now, I failed. I think the first step is to go into, I haven't failed, I still have a plan, I'm still me. All the wonderful things that made my business successful are still there. All of the components are there. So how am I going to get through this time? And then you have to take an honest look at your financial situation. So the first step is not to be afraid, but to open the statements and open everything and say, today, this is my reality. To be 100% honest with yourself about, this is my payroll, this is how many people are working for me, this is how much I have, and here is kind of what I'm facing. And then go and one step at a time, start researching the resources that are available. The resources from the government, the loans, perhaps, rent deferrals, reaching out, like seeing, okay, what are the steps here that I can take to help myself through this really difficult time? And don't think forever. Like, think, if I can help myself manage for 1 month or maybe even a week, I'm successful, I managed. And then a week later, you're like, all right, well, this is under my belt, what's next? So really kind of just taking a very, very difficult, complicated task and breaking it into small, achievable pieces, that, is what going to get all of us out of this difficult situation.
Yeah. Good advice. I mean, really, it's going back to the nutrition thing. It's just breaking it down into pieces. First, you work on one thing, focus on just the problem in front of you. And then once you tackle that, then we can, and it's almost like living through it. You're like, okay, I lived through that. Now I know that I can do it again. Yep. So yeah, really good advice.
That's right. And I think that it all comes down to taking that action, that doing something. It doesn't matter how insignificant it might seem at the time, but that small acts of, just that action that we take gets us out of that stupor, where we are, just frozen with fear and uncertainty, and that self-doubt gets us out of that mode and into, what, I'm actually doing something.
Yeah.
about this, and one step at a time, one foot in front of another. That's how we get out of difficult situations, specifically of the difficult financial situations. And especially when it comes to entrepreneurs, when you go, and maybe in this time, like if for people who have like truly nothing to do, like a good book about a successful entrepreneur, it's amazing how many of them have failed multiple times, went bankrupt, or were on the verge of bankruptcy, and before they actually persevered and succeeded. And they each and every one of them says that those experiences were the ones that made them stronger, made them learn extremely valuable lessons that eventually led them build successful businesses.
Yeah, right. So it doesn't mean that it's a failure just because it looks like it's going one direction. It can always turn around.
Yeah.
And we will come out of this. This is not forever, but
Yep.
It can feel very overwhelming.
No shadow of a doubt.
Yeah. So you're doing some pretty cool things career-wise. You're on Bloomberg and CNBC, right?
Yep, that's CNBC. That's correct. Yep.
And do you have like specific dates so if people wanted to watch you, or is it just sort of they let you know when?
Yes, I'm going to be on Fox Business on May 14th, and on Bloomberg at 8 o'clock in the morning, or like around that time, on May 19th.
Okay. And do you talk about the same thing every time, or is that?
Well, no, because market is changing and economic environment is always changing. But I do want to tell you a little bit of a story about this.
Yeah, please.
So I haven't always done TV. And I also want to tell you that it wasn't my goal and objective in life to do it. But I learned about the program that was an initiative by Bloomberg, where some executives at Bloomberg analyzed the guests that were coming on Bloomberg television and realized that only 10% of their guests were female. And so they decided to start the program that was called New Voices, that was designed to train women in various walks of financial life to be media ready, to be equipped to go on national television and tell their stories. And so I applied to this program, and specifically, when I was applying, I quite honest, never thought that they would pick me, because what I said in my thesis, that little essay that I wrote, is that business television is very dry, it's boring, and I personally don't watch it. So because women, we like storytelling, we like examples, we like, kind of just actionable advice. Also, just if I'm spending 15 minutes of my time watching TV, can you please tell me what I should be doing, instead of just, throwing a whole bunch of data at me. And to my surprise, they picked me. And I have to say that the first time I was on TV, I barely recall what I actually said, because it was so scary and it was really nerve-wracking. But I felt that it was a unique, truly once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And I felt that by doing this, I was showing, first of all, my sons that, if I'm going to be afraid, how am I going to tell them not to be afraid of challenges in life? And also, I really wanted to kind of pave the way for more women that are, probably don't look like TV anchors, or, that like in my case, I have an accent. So one of my biggest fears was, they are never going to pick a woman with an accent, right? To go on TV. And it's all in my head. I realized this is just, we are, again, remember, we are the ones holding ourselves back, not other people. So yes, it was a very big challenge for me. And I started last year, and, I haven't really regretted it. It's been wonderful.
I think that's so cool, that to just be able to like turn on the TV and there you are.
That's right. That's right.
You're right.
It's pretty amazing.
Big inspiration for your kids. I mean, their mom's on TV. So.
That's right. And especially in this time of quarantine, where they can sit in their living room and mom is upstairs in her office, and then they can see me and hear me. So they're getting a kick out of that.
Yeah. Well, let's see. I'm just going to scroll through the screen and see if any questions came in while we were talking. And then if anyone who's with us right now does have questions for Katerina, feel free to type them in the chat, and we can get to those. While we're waiting, was there any other pieces of information or pearls of wisdom that you feel might be relevant to share with everyone right now?
Well, actually, yes, there is there is one point. I wouldn't call it the word. It's, I'll be honest, it's not words of one of my wisdom, but I, a couple of years ago, started going to the Makers Conference in California. And for any of you who are not familiar with the Makers, please Google it. Just name Makers. It's fantastic. It's an initiative that started by a fantastic documentary filmmaker, Dylan McGee, when she wanted to make a video of Gloria Steinem. And Gloria Steinem said, you can't make a story of the female movement by just making a video of one woman. It takes all of us and all of our stories. So they're fantastic stories. And one of the best speakers that I've ever seen on the Makers, her name is Maj Medora, and she is an entrepreneur and larger than life, successful woman. And one of the things she said is, she said, as women, not only we have aversion to managing money, but we also have aversion to talking about money. And Jen, you know this, I brought this up in one of our conversations, that it will be perfectly fine sometimes to look at the group of men sitting at the bar discussing their taxes and, what did you buy recently in the market and what did your accountant tell you? And what ends up happening in this way is they're mentoring each other, coaching and teaching each other. And as women, we discuss everything. We discuss food and kids and, our personal life and, just every single aspect, our health. We discuss extremely intimate issues freely, but when it comes to money, we freeze up. Yeah. And I encourage each and every one of you to just, like, as an experiment, and you don't have to say like how much money you're making, but to your closest friend, just say, hey, this market is down. Like, how are your accounts doing? And just see, like, what you're going to see is like this glazing for a second. Like, when a person is almost taken back for a moment, and then explain that the reason you're doing this is because we as women, if we opened up to each other a little bit more, and started discussing financial matters in the same way we discuss our health and our sex life and our kids and all of the other aspects of our lives, we would actually be significantly more comfortable managing our money and significantly, feeling better about our overall financial wellness.
Yes, I have. After that conversation, I have a good girlfriend in Florida, and she's actually made a comment that we'll get to in a second. But I went to her and explained this conversation that I had with you. And I think even before that, we were speaking freely about money, but she's also a business owner. And so it's opened up the door to a lot of conversations where I certainly feel comfortable, and I hope she does too, to just pick up the phone or text and ask a question, or like, hey, how are you doing this with your business? I don't know that that's a conversation that many women feel comfortable having, but that conversation with you did change the way that I look at that. And you said something else, and I don't really remember it all the way, but it was sort of along those lines of how men have this, it's the F it, like, number.
Right. Fuck you number. That's exactly, I'm sorry. I don't know what I should say or shouldn't, but
no,
it's
you're fine. It's number. Live.
And I think it's from the same exact speech. Again, Makers, Maj Medora, like, she does a much better job delivering it than me. But the point of it is that, men have goals that are significantly higher than the goals we as women set for ourselves. Because, when you ask an average man saying that, what is this FU number, and what it means is, what is the number at which point you stop worrying about money? Yeah. Like, at which point you say, I work because I want to. I run my business because I want to. But if I wanted to stop at any point in time, I'm kind of done. I have enough money to live very comfortably. That's the meaning of that number. And, when this woman who was delivering the speech asked her mentor, who was extremely established and, woman, the number that she said was very low in comparison to a number, you would usually hear from a man. So we need to, as women, just learn to set our standards a little bit higher, and set higher goals for ourselves.
Yeah. So Alana says, if someone is looking for, and I'm turning because the question is,
that's right.
for a financial advisor, where would they look?
Well, there are a lot of financial advisors. There are a lot of good financial advisors out there. So LinkedIn is absolutely fantastic. And I would say that when you're interviewing financial advisors, talk to a few people. Just look at, there are great firms out there. And there's this general misconception. People feel that you need to have a lot of money to work with advisor, but as a matter of fact, every single firm, even Vanguard and Charles Schwab and Fidelity, they all offer some level of advice, and then you go into, there's Wells Fargo, Morgan Stanley. But I would say that LinkedIn probably is one of the best resources out there. Meet with few people, go on their websites, see their profiles, read about, just kind of just do a little bit of a due diligence before. And when you meet with a financial advisor, the questions to ask would not just be, what is your approach and how would you design, a plan for me? But also would be, how much do you charge for your services? How do you bill? All the questions are good to ask. It's okay. We shouldn't, when we go and we talk to an advisor, write them out beforehand. Same way when you kind of think, when you're going to the doctor, right? You want to know what they're going to do, what is the plan, how they're going to implement it, and how much it's going to cost you, right? So you need to know all these things. And there are different approaches and different methodologies out there. So that's why it is so important to speak to few people, to kind of compare and, compare the strategies and figure out who would be most appropriate. Because finding financial advisor, it's the same way of finding your doctor, your coach, your nutritionalist. Like, you have to have a good personal relationship, and there has to be that level of trust, that you need to know that the person on the other side of that table has exactly the same interests, that they're interested in your well-being and in taking you from this plan A, from point A to point B. Like, the interests have to be 100% aligned.
Yeah. What are your thoughts as women working with other women as their financial advisor? Is there a benefit to that as a woman, or is it sort of, because you have certain doctors that you're like, I would really feel more comfortable with another woman, but what about a financial advisor? Do you feel like
I think, like with everything, we have to be honest with ourselves, right? And the truth of it is not every woman has to work with other women, right? In other words, you might go to a doctor and for one reason or another, you feel more comfortable with a male doctor, and that's okay. So we have to, I think, stop being apologetic, and also, kind of putting ourselves in those, frameworks and boxes. But I think, and plus the other side of it is, the really sad statistics in my industry is when I became a financial advisor 20 years ago, only 16% of advisors were female. And 20 years later, 17% of advisors are female. So we can probably spend another hour speaking on how I believe it is the best job in the world. It's unbelievably rewarding, and more women should become financial advisors. So I would say that I would be thrilled if more people work with financial advisors, period. There are a whole bunch of advisors that are male and female that are just fantastic, there for their clients. But yes, I will tell you, as advisor, it gives me an absolute pleasure. Like, I am thrilled when I am working with a woman who is maybe in the difficult situation or even in a fantastic situation in life, like, entrepreneur, for example, who like spends so much time focusing on her business. And I am able to kind of just take the financial life that is the other side of it and demystify it and make it simple and, help out. So for me as female advisor, I'm absolutely thrilled to be working with women, but to kind of just individuals out there who maybe don't have an advisor, it doesn't matter, male or female, just, working with advisor is really always a good idea, but finding a good one is the key. So that's why that's where the interviews come in, as you would interview your employees, as you would interview your doctors, the same way you need to be interviewing advisors.
Okay. Yeah. Great. I don't see any other questions coming in. So to get in touch with you, where can they find you? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
The best way to get in touch with me is probably through my LinkedIn page.
Okay. And it's
So, Katerina Simonetti, at LinkedIn, you can't miss me. And if you have any questions, if there was perhaps a question that you thought of afterwards and you didn't think of at the time, I'll be happy to answer.
Yeah, and this interview will take a couple of days, but it will be available as a recording. So
perfect. And Jen, thank you so much. I just wanted to say thank you for hosting me. This was, an absolute, a blast to have this conversation. And, I just want to say that what you're doing is so important and impactful, and especially, at this time in our lives. And bringing all this various content clearly shows that you care not just about one side of your patient's life, but also about their financial well-being, physical well-being. So this is wonderful, and I'm thrilled to be here with you.
Well, thank you for coming on and shedding light on a topic that sometimes gets pushed aside for one reason or another. So lots of valuable information here. I certainly learned more all about financial wellness, and thank you for coming on.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.